Jordan Peterson, here he is discussing what else, trans people with this Russian satirist, Konstantin Kisin, I guess is his name. And this is Peterson's latest fixation, and let's hear what he has to say.
We've just interviewed somebody about this, a woman who transitioned her child and regretted it, and we'll be putting that out very shortly.
Oh,
okay. Can you pause it? Because transitions, we've gone over this data multiple times on this program. There is a small percentage of people that do detransition. It's a very small percentage. What's the number? Something like
under 10%.
Under 10%, single digits. Depends on the study. And there are a lot of those, which isn't as covered in that figure, that transition back.
Yeah, and I would also add the reason for the lack of transition. All these freaks would have you imply that they've been they've woken up from the mind virus that's infiltrated them, but it's actually like the complete lack of societal support.
Yes.
For what they're going through.
All right, start.
We've just interviewed somebody about this, a woman who transitioned her child and regretted it, and we'll be putting that out very shortly.
Oh, okay. Well, I did an interview with Chloe Cole.
I saw that.
Who had transitioned and regretted it. Yeah.
And I think
Konstantin, at the beginning of Genesis, when God creates human beings, he does say, people are made in the image of God. So that's the installation of this divine transcendent value that's part and parcel of, let's say, the eternal soul, right? It's emblematic of the intrinsic dignity and importance of each person, regardless of status. But then the second phrase is men and women, he created them, right? The notion that there's this fundamental bifurcation that's built into the structure of reality itself. And you can easily make that into, you can easily make a biological case for that. I mean, sex is, I don't know if there is a conceptual or perceptual category, an orienting category. I don't think there's an orienting category that's more fundamental than male and female.
Okay. Well, this is, we'll finish it in a second. But when you speak about Jordan Peterson as a fundamentalist, that's like a perfect encapsulation of that. That it's a ordained bifurcation, divine, transcendent values. People make this argument about race too. There's multiple races, so it's not a fundamental bifurcation, right? But it is a trait that has been naturalized by society, much like gender. And when conservatives naturalize things like that, that is the pretext to separations, divisions, and hierarchies. And what Jordan Peterson does on a daily basis on his program and through whatever, pseudoscience he has been peddling for the past few years, he makes a case for fundamental inequalities by claiming that they are a part of historical and religious archetypes that are static and throughout history and cannot be challenged. And that is what he does with gender. That's what he's been arguing in his desire to, as a thought experiment, return to women being property of men, so rape can be prosecuted. It's what he does with his anti-trans stuff, and he's a step away from race science with the same kind of line of thought.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely gesturing to the Bible, because a lot of conservatives do this when they want to quibble back and forth between being scientific but not really knowing a lot of science or history. It allows him to set a standard of the Bible says this, so that's a universal that we can all agree to, even though we all don't, we're all not Christians. Just in the history of the world, we haven't been. And it gives him carte blanche to invent facts about human history that just aren't true. He can just gesture to certain things for as long as humans have been around, they have had male and female. Not true. There have been two genders. Not true. That these are just things that just aren't true. Yeah. That there's evidence, and they're widely known to not be true. But in the conservative pseudoscience sphere, where you want to pretend like you're engaging in real science and real in-depth history, you just have to have a way to bound the conversation without people going okay, but what about native peoples? They didn't have only two genders. That doesn't make any sense. That's just, there's still people don't have only two genders nowadays. It's it's just deeply intellectual intellectually incurious to like
Yeah.
first like set your foundation of your thought as the Bible, and then go like, and so we can see that reflected in science. And you're like, no, we can't.
This is what the post Scopes monkey trial reactionary has to do. Like, you have to speak to the massive fundamentalist base that is like slurping up your shit, but you also have to give it a scientific or philosophical gloss, because otherwise people will know to laugh you out of it. Yeah.
You really see it a lot in like conspiracy theorists who like think they're a little smarter than the average conspiracy theorist. I haven't brought it up in a while, but flat earthers do this a lot. Because like if you just cop to believing in God, being anti-trans has a little bit more sense to it, because you're like, oh yeah, I'm just a Christian fundamentalist. I believe in whatever evangelical understanding of the Bible that, you know, has been pumped into my head from, you know, osmosis growing up in America or other parts of the West. And if, you know, that comes into contradiction with the world or whatever, it doesn't matter. When you want to pretend like you believe in science, you have to like pretend like you're engaging with like actual facts, and you know they're not doing that. But you know, in the flat Earth community, like it's way easier to explain the Earth being flat if you just believe in like God. But like some people pretend like they don't, and then they just have to keep like, yeah, you know, this is in the Bible. And if you also read like the Quran, it's also like you know, looking for those sort of cross-cultural mythology connections that like give legitimacy to like a scientific position, because you know that's how a lot of people think about the world. But it's not really, you know, it's just anecdotes basically.
Right. I just honestly can't get over how we watch clips of these various right wingers every single week. You know, the five of us, and then you guys, obviously with Sam, watch them every day. And I feel like the amount of content coming out from the right, obsessed with transgender people, is just so unbelievable in the amount that they're putting out. It's like these guys talk more about trans people than any trans person I know talks about trans people. They're obsessed. They're obsessed.
Yeah. They're acceptable target now. Like the number of acceptable targets in America that don't like get you quote unquote canceled, as in like don't get you to lose your job, is low now. And so trans people have become the most acceptable punching bag, and people need to understand that like they're going to use them as a wedge issue to push forward even more draconian policies that affect not just trans people but everybody. And like that doesn't mean even if they were only affecting trans people you shouldn't care, but you know, people being willing to like, you know, in this case relegate the issue to only trans people, but you see it all the time, like ethnicize an issue, like, oh, this is, you know, the pipeline is going through native land, and this is just Native Americans caring about native issues, and then like it poisons everyone's water. You're like, oh, obviously it's not just native people's land that is going to be poisoned, because that's not how it works. You know, you just see people, it's easier to pretend this is an issue that only affects one part of the population up until it starts affecting everybody, and then to wonder how it happened.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And Jordan Peterson, it's amazing too how when so much of his language is as ambiguous as it possibly could be, and as like purposefully obtuse. And then when it comes to these religious archetypes or the structure of society as he sees fit, it becomes static, unchanging, don't question it. This is how hierarchy should be. This is a binary. And he still tries to position himself as some sort of thought leader. But do we have like 10 or 15 more seconds of this? Let's play that.
Conceptual or perceptual category, an orienting category. I don't think there's an orienting category that's more fundamental than male and female. I think it's more fundamental than up and down. And
That's
so you blow that
statement
out with your Tower of Babel, which is exactly what we're doing right now, is you blow out everything. And so I do think the T in the LGBT, ETC alphabet panoply, the T is going to be the breaking point. I do believe that.
Gotcha. Well, we know you do.
You're working toward that end. We know, you freak.
Yeah. Anyway, that's...
Why isn't this guy in jail? I thought that this entire thing was because he said if he doesn't succumb to the trans people, he's going to be thrown in jail. And instead, it's just the sort of governing body of psychologists as like questioning him. I don't know. I thought maybe he was exaggerating that for effect. No. But I would throw him in jail. I'll throw him in gulag. And the Penguin publishers who had him write the intro to Solzhenitsyn.
first they're going to deal with the Andrew Sullivan conundrum of forcing him to go down on them, and then they'll move on to arresting Jordan Peterson.
I mean,
That's a good plan.
Sullivan says he has to go down again. I've never gone down in the first place.
I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't put myself in that.
It's not manly.
That's,
and I'm the expert.
that's an unholy place between a woman's legs.